to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready. Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Ready. Move.
You may be seated.
Only kidding. Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day. It originally designated as a day to celebrate the end of World War I. The First World War ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. 103 years ago. Congress passed a resolution for its annual observance in 1926, and it became a national holiday in 1938. As time went on, the nation engaged in further conflicts during World War II and Korea. Veterans groups lobbied for a change. Rather than honoring the armistice and only those who served in World War I, there was a push for a holiday to honor all veterans from every war and conflict that the United States had encountered. In recognition of this movement, in 1954, President Dwight David Eisenhower officially changed the name to Veterans Day. During this month, people throughout the country will gather to remember and pay gratitude to those who have served our country. Our gathering is just a small spark in the flame of pride that burns across the country today and every day. I am privileged to be part of your ceremony. I started my career in the Army, my 24-year career in the Army, when I was a junior in college at Bloomfield College, New Jersey. A recruiter came to one of our nursing club meetings one month and brought information about the Army and the student nurse program. There was a post office in Bloomfield that had, now you know I'm going back quite a ways, it had a recruiting station in the basement for Army, Air Force, and Navy. So I went to each of them and I applied, filled out paperwork for all of them. My dad was in the Navy, so my heart was really for the Navy at that point. I walked back to my apartment, which was about 2 miles, and before I even got in the door, the phone was ringing, and the Army recruiter wanted to know when we could set up appointments for my physical and other tests. I never heard back from the Air Force or the Navy. Many years later, I found out that those branches did not offer their recruiters any bonus points for recruiting a nurse. So only the Army. So that's how I ended up in the Army instead of the Navy. Coming from a middle to lower class, middle family, I knew it was a hardship for my parents to pay for my education. At the time, the Army had the student nurse program, which paid for the last 2 years of your education and commissioned you as a PFC during school and a first lieutenant after graduation, and you owed 3 years of service in return. I joined. After basic training at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, my first duty station was at Wilson Army Hospital in Fort Dix. I worked there in the surgical intensive care unit and recovery room, and then later as an evening night house nursing supervisor. I had married and had one of our sons while in Fort Dix. After the 3-year tour in Fort Dix, it was time to make a decision. My commitment to the Army was over, so I had a choice to either stay in or leave. My husband and I decided that we'd like to go to Europe, and if the Army would send us there, we'd stay in. I received orders for SHAPE, which is the Supreme Headquarters Allied Power of Europe, which is in Belgium. There I was a head nurse of the emergency room and the international clinic, which catered to the Brits, Turkey, Italy, and US service members and their families. After a year at SHAPE, we transferred to the NATO Health Clinic in Brussels, where I was the head nurse of that clinic. And that clinic served the military, US military personnel and civilians, US civilians that were stationed at NATO. We went over with 1 son, but came home with 3. There was no TV. Next was my assignment here at Fort Gordon at Eisenhower. I was assigned to a surgical unit, then the surgical intensive care, and finally the day surgery unit. From there we went to William Bowman Army Medical Center, which is in El Paso, Texas. I had a series of positions: evening night hospital supervisor, head nurse on an orthopedic unit, the surgical section supervisor, and I was assigned to develop and open a day surgery unit. Desert Storm was during this time. Few nurses from Beaumont went to Iraq because we were designated as a major receiving area for our wounded. We were all charged with setting up and preparing for that. We're thankful that we never had to use it. I was in charge of a minimal care unit, which was to be housed in an old barracks about a mile from the hospital. I had to decide on how to get the meals, medications, supplies, linen, staffing, etc. That goes with opening a new unit away from the main hospital. Our next assignment was back at Fort Dix, New Jersey. We were there for a year. The hospital was transitioning from an Army facility to Air Force. Fort Dix was closing as we knew it as Fort Dix. Meanwhile, Philadelphia Naval was also closing its hospitals. So some of their personnel were sent to work with us at Walson. And then came the Air Force. The three services working together in one unit was interesting, to say the least. We looked at each other and wondered how we could survive as a country when we could hardly even communicate well enough with each other with all our little jargons to be able to run a unit. But we had fun. Our last station before retirement was back here at Eisenhower. I knew I was going to retire. We had bought a house here the first time we were stationed, so we decided to come on back to the area. I was the manager for the day surgery unit and pre-op areas. After retirement, I was easily able to get a nurse manager job at NCGA, which is now Augusta University. The Army had prepared me well for management and leadership roles. Historians have said that Dwight David Eisenhower was prouder to be a soldier than he was of being president. While relatively few veterans ever reached the rank of general, pride in one's military service is a bond shared by nearly all who have served. I can honestly say I never regretted my decision to join or stay in the Army. Although some days were long, the years seemed short. Fewer than 10% of Americans can claim the title veteran. Less than 1% of our population is currently serving. Perhaps this is why the military is such a close-knit family. No matter where I was stationed, I ran into people that I had been stationed with at prior assignments. I still keep in touch with my roommate from basic training, as well as many others. They truly become part of your family. We're here today to honor this 10%, these heroes that remember their achievements, their courage, their dedication, and to thank them for their sacrifices. Today we honor every man and woman who has proudly worn the uniform of our armed services and bravely defended America from many evils of the world. Whether serving here at home or abroad, this elite group of individuals has ensured that you and I are able to live our daily lives free of tyranny and fear. This relatively small group of individuals does not ask for anything from us in return. In fact, we can never repay them for all they have done for us. Reflecting on the heroes who may be joining us today and those who are only here in spirit, a person can't help but to feel awe. In our community, we stand in the midst of patriots and the families and friends of those who have honorably served. I'd like to recognize the service members and veterans who are present here today. Would you please stand so that we can thank you properly? Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and our newest branch, Space Force. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. Thank you for your service. You have made our armed forces the most respected in the world. I'd also like to recognize the family members of any service member. They are the unsung heroes of our nation. We know you have lived through difficult times and often carried the heavy burden to keep the home fires burning. This is why when service members talk about assignments where families were able to accompany them, they say we were transferred. We were stationed at somewhere, not I. Would all the dependents please stand and be recognized? Military spouses have endured career interruptions, frequent changes of address, and a disproportionate share of parental responsibilities. The children often have to deal with the challenges of changing schools, separation from their friends, and hardest of all, the separation from a parent who is deployed. To all the family members, thank you for all you have done. The Army, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, Navy, Air Force, who else? Space Force, couldn't do it without the families, that's for sure. There have been many medals awarded to this nation's veterans. We've added their names to monuments and named buildings for them, to honor them for their bravery. But nothing can ever replace the hole left behind by the fallen service member, and no number of medals or ribbons can combat or comfort the ones left behind. Let us pause for a moment of silence to honor all those who made the ultimate sacrifice defending our great nation. While we reflect on their lives, let us also pause to remember their families, those that will forever carry the burden of the true cost of freedom. The service members we honor today are from all walks of life. Whether past or present, they share several fundamental qualities. They possess courage, pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty, and integrity, all the qualities that are needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Since the first shots at Lexington and Concord were fired and our Revolutionary War began, American men and women have been answering the nation's call to duty. Millions of Americans have fought and died on battlefields here and abroad to defend our freedoms and way of life. Today, our troops continue to make the ultimate sacrifice. But despite this, Americans continue to step forward to say, I'm ready to serve. They follow in the footsteps of generations of Americans. For many veterans, our nation was important enough to endure long separations from their families, missed births of their children, freeze in sub-zero temperatures, bake in wild jungles and deserts, lose limbs, and if necessary, lose their lives. Before we depart today, let us focus our thoughts of thanks to those who are spending this sacred day away from their families and friends. Those not on American soil, but in foreign nations proudly displaying Old Glory on their right arm. May they return home safely. May we always remember all the freedoms that our veterans have secured for us. We are truly privileged to have such noble and extraordinary citizens. God bless you, and God bless America.